All right, my name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to our step guide meeting, and more about that in a minute. Please join me in prayer. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my unmanageability, the 12 steps, and you, for an open mind and a new experience with myself, my unmanageability, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in the serenity prayer. God, to grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. So, the particular purpose of this meeting is a gathering. It's not connected to any 12-step fellowship, so it's not an official meeting. It's a gathering broadly connected to the 12 steps as a train the trainer kind of mechanism. We can speak in terms of corporate terms, educational terms. People who actually are helping other people with the 12 steps, no matter what tradition you're in or what fellowship that you're in. The 12 steps are the 12 steps, very little variation in any of the 12-step fellowships. And the purpose is to have people who are active ask questions about what they're experiencing or questions that come from people they're trying to help or their own journey, so that there's a collaboration amongst the people who are active and experienced, sharing their knowledge and their experience. It's been broadened, of course, to include people who want to help other people in sponsor relationships and or specifically in step guide. And I make a distinction. It's arbitrary because it's my experience. I have had a sponsor in the beginning, and then I engaged a step guide. Not my sponsor. I've never gone through the steps with my sponsor. I have two, one for 28 years and now the last one for 10 years. And I've never gone through the steps with my sponsor. I don't believe that's the ideal. The ideal from my standpoint would be that the sponsor's primary role is to take the individual who's asking for help through the steps so that they can get some help, and then be the accountability partner during that time and after that time. Accountability partner, I think, is the best synonym for sponsorship. Step guide is a very unique designation. Somebody who guides somebody through the steps in using their own experience. Many of you have been through the steps through the experience that I've had, either directly through my workshops or individually through me, or with somebody else who has had that experience. But I think I heard Jeanette talk about that we broadened it so that this is available to anybody who wants to participate in this gathering to acquire some knowledge and or some experience or to share theirs, or especially about the questions. And so that's really the purpose. And
Hi, Herb. I am attempting to work with a lady, and I'm very frustrated. When she asked me to be her sponsor, I wasn't in the step guide, or I would have said, no, I'll be a step guide. But anyway, I have a difficult time. In the beginning, I told her that I would not chase after her, that I would suggest things for her to do, but I wasn't going to work any harder than she was working. And so she started out okay. She would call me at the designated times, and then there was nothing. And she's always every time I talk to her, she wants to tell me her long, involved story. And
so are you her sponsor or her step guide or both?
Well, right, both.
Okay, all right, all right. So then you need to get really clear with yourself as to what the role of sponsor is. Is it a person who sits there and listens to story? And if that's the truth, and from my standpoint, that's part of the dynamic of sponsorship, is to listen to what their concern and suffering is. But then you have to determine how long you will listen. Now, there's
Right.
no rules here. I can determine, because I have sponsored people usually for a long time, as to where it's going, and I can interrupt their stories and say, okay, so tell me, what is the real source of your suffering here, and what's the operating principle? Now, if they're in the step work, I can also ask them, so what step are you doing? Or I can interrupt them and say, so how's your 11th step going? And we'll talk about that, because the story is interesting, but I'm not a
Right.
therapist. And quite frankly, I don't want to hear story unless I've been on the calls for 50 minutes, an hour and a half. I've been on those calls where I've listened. Not only have I listened to the story, I've asked questions about the story so that I can help them see what is a delusion in the story. So, having said all of that, it's about, what is this call about, and what is your role? How can you help? And
That's
sometimes I will
right.
interrupt them and say, how can I help you with this? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I did want
No,
to
that's
give
okay.
my perspective on it.
I've heard her story many, many times,
I
and
bet.
every time she calls, she wants to tell me her story again and add to it.
Is she doing the steps?
I am attempting to guide her through the steps, but
So
every
where is
time
she in this? Where is she in the step work?
we just step one.
All right, and so she's in step one. Do you ask her what she's doing and how she's doing and what she's experiencing in her step one process?
Well, it took quite a while for her to realize that, yes, she is an alcoholic.
Okay.
So I'll attempt to guide her with questions and readings, and then I won't hear from her for a month.
Okay. Well,
And then
but what have you asked her to do in terms of checking in with you?
I have asked her to check in with me every other day.
Oh, that's a lot.
So it's to try to keep her on track.
Okay.
But
Does she do that?
doesn't.
No, she
No.
doesn't do that. Okay.
No.
So you could say to her, I've asked you to check in with me regularly. You don't do that. It's your life and you get to do what you want. But when you call me, I want you to tell me what you're doing in the steps. That's our primary focus here. And you might want to share your concerns in some other areas with people in your program or your friends, or get a good therapist.
And yes, I have suggested all of those things, and I have told her, I said, I'm not your therapist. I can't talk about what medications you might be on.
Yeah.
I have no experience there.
And what's her response to all of that?
Well, she wants to tell me a continuation of some elaborate story. And I'll go, but what about what we were talking about?
Good.
Have you read what I asked you to read so we can talk about it?
What's her answer?
Well, I haven't, because blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. No. Then wonderful. You're really shaping it. And then if she hasn't done the work, I say, call me when you've done the work. I'm going to hang up now.
I haven't said I'm going to hang up now, but I have said, when you have finished doing what I asked you to do, call me.
And I tell her, I don't hang up on them. I tell them, and I'm going to hang up now. Call me when you've done some work.
Okay.
It's not rude, but you're setting the standards. You're in charge of the relationship.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying be rude. I'm not saying cut them
No,
off. As I said, and I really mean it, I've listened for 30, 45, 50 minutes, depending, longer sometimes when I mean, life's in session for a lot of people, and there's a lot of real, true suffering here. Yeah. But a lot of it comes from their own delusions and
right.
perceptions, which is, I'm sure, this person's situation as you're describing it. And she does, God bless her, she just doesn't know that she doesn't know. And she thinks this is the way to do it and this is the solution. And it always feels better to talk to somebody who will listen to us.
Yeah, and she has said people don't want to be around her because she tells the story so
Well,
often.
yeah, no, she's I mean, you don't maybe want to
At least
say
she's aware of that.
you may, yeah, well, she isn't aware of it
Right,
because she continues to do it.
true.
And you've been around me, and I'm not reluctant to say, well, that's because your story's boring. I don't mean to offend them, but I do want to startle them, wake them up, and if they have to be offended in the process, that's okay, because then they can deal with that.
The last time I talked to her, I said, stop. I've heard that story before.
There, great, yeah.
So I guess I just keep setting the guidelines, the
Yeah.
guardrails,
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
how, I may never hear from her again. She's supposed to call in a couple,
Yeah,
so
that's her
we'll
problem,
see.
not yours.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah. No, and yeah, it sounds to me like you're shaping the relationship in a healthy way. You want to help, but you don't want to enable.
Right. Absolutely. No enabling. Thank you.
Well, and enabling is co-signing their story by listening to it.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Herb.
That's what this call is about, is helping people shape their response, because all of us are here because we want to be helpful, truly helpful. Yeah. Joni, please.
Hi, I just have a quick question. For the groups that are FA, in the active participants, I got a question. Is abstinence required? I mean,
By who?
by you in terms of them being in the group?
Not at all. Not one bit. I don't talk about food.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Because it's not my experience. And I tell the FA group specifically, I have no rules. Now, your fellowship has a lot of rules, and your sponsor may have some rules, but I have no rules to take you through the steps.
And so also in other groups, you don't, well, might strongly suggest, but there are no requirements if people have relapses, if whatever. Okay.
No requirement. In fact, no requirements. I do have some strong suggestions.
Yes, so do I. But all right, thank you.
And that's what the big book says. We have some suggestions. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, and it also indicates we have some requirements if you look at it clearly, but it's in the context of we don't have any requirements because we can't enforce them anyway, and they're not helpful. But we have lots of experience that we share. Thanks, Joni. That's a very relevant, and not just in the FA program, but quite frankly, there's a lot of AA meetings and groups that have rules. Is because we're human. And humans make rules to try to control and try to feel safe. Yeah. Thanks, Joni, very much. Deb, please.
Morning, Herb. Thank you for this. Could you say a little bit more about the distinction between sponsor as accountability partner and step guide, and how you distinguish?
It's totally arbitrary and relative, and it's not official, but it's my experience. I got a sponsor right away, and I kept that sponsor because he had uncommon common sense about finances, work, relationships, business, recreation, fun. It was just living life. And I needed lots of feedback about common sense because I didn't have any. And there's lots of reasons for that, but that's neither here nor there. But I didn't know that he didn't know much about the big book or the steps. And so I didn't ever work the steps in any effective way with any direction for those first 5 years I was in the program. I went to meetings every day, but I didn't, and I called him every day, but I didn't get any real understanding about the big book and the step process. Then I heard a man share about the big book and the step process, and I engaged him as a step guide. In retrospect, I engaged a project manager for a year. We started step 1. We went through step 12. It took a year. I had a powerful experience, and we disengaged. He wasn't my friend. He wasn't my sponsor. We completed the work of the project, the steps. So I call him my step guide. And I had 3 additional step guides over the next 20 years. Never once with my sponsor, always with a project manager. So the clear difference from my standpoint is a sponsor is an ongoing, regular relationship. A step guide is like a project manager.
So when you would,
beginning and an end.
when you check in with your sponsor as your accountability partner, what kinds of things would you talk about then?
That was the question I asked him in the beginning because I'm new to AA. And I said, so what do we talk about when I call you every day? He said, tell me what you're thinking, tell me what you're feeling, and tell me what you're doing.
Yeah, because I'm finding as a step guide and a sponsor that I can't do all that in a phone call. So if we're going to work steps, I set aside time during the week just to work on that step.
Oh yes, absolutely. That would be, I can't see somebody not doing that, that it's a formal teaching kind of relationship where you have a dedicated time to do just that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Herb.
Well, that's a wonderful question. And I think that's a relatively complete answer to it, and especially the way you just ended it. So thank you for that, Deb. Yep. Lynn.
Hi, Herb. Thanks for the question, Deb, before, because I had a similar question. So I've asked you before about, I have a male sponsee, or I'm not sure what he is, the relationship right now.
You're helping somebody.
Yes. So, and he admitted that he's new to the program. He's never had any consistency, has never had a sponsor. So I gave him some direction. Only what I'm finding is that he doesn't stick to his call time. I ask him to do something and he doesn't do it necessarily, necessarily when I ask him to, or the next time or whatever, but he does it. Eventually he does it. And he has a lot of issues that need professional help. And so I don't want to be the person that he calls to dump on when he's not doing the work. So I really don't know how to help him, because I asked him, I said, other than calling me and listening to Herb on Tuesday, what are you doing? He said, nothing. And I said, are you doing the homework with Herb? He goes, oh yeah, I do it either the day before, the day of the workshop. And then I said, well, are you going to meetings? No. Are you praying on your knees? No. So I really don't know how to help him, whether I should just cut him loose already or.
But you are helping him.
And it's my expectation then that he's not doing what I'm asking him to do.
Partly. So I guess the real question is, are you helping him? And the answer, at least in this short conversation, is it sounds like you are helping him. Number one, he's doing some things. Number two, he's regularly checking in with you and having conversations. Now, is it what he needs? That's a different question. But you are helping him because he's staying in the dance. And he's new. You said that. I'm assuming this is Al-Anon?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you can make any suggestions that will expand the way you could be helpful, but he may or may not respond. Probably the most important thing that keep in mind. I'm not saying do it yet, but keep in mind that he probably needs a male sponsor.
He does, and I tried to gear him that way. And the
Yeah.
two that I geared him to, they didn't want to do it. So I'm saying, oh,
You say they didn't want to do it or he didn't want to.
well, I don't know what the one of them says. You know what? This guy is kind of flaky. No, I don't want to get involved.
All right, all right. So just continue to help him. And when it comes to you, either through prayer or through exposure to other men, you could periodically make a recommendation that they call that person and that he call that person and see if something will click. I would say be patient with it and keep responding to what it is you want him to do and respond to allowing him to be as flaky and as superficial as he is until he gets some traction.
So I'm coming up on the 30 days because I said,
I mean, what?
I'm coming up on 30 days because when he asked me to sponsor him, I said, do you know what a sponsor is?
I see.
And I said, okay, we're going to try this for 30 days. And this is what I expect from you in the 30 days. And when you call me, it's the same thing what you said. Tell me what you did, thinking, what you're doing. And okay. So I'm coming out in the 30 days and I'm finding that he's not consistent. And he tells me the same thing every day. Sometimes there's something positive where he didn't react. That's good. And I try to reinforce him. And every time I ask him, what is it that you're asking me to do?
Right.
He can't answer that.
All right.
He says, I guess I want you to be a sponsor. And I'm telling him, this is what a sponsor does. And I don't know if he hears it or what, but I'm getting frustrated. So I'm saying, is this helping me? Or is it, I don't know, or is it, again, my Al-Anon expectation of what people should be doing that I'm getting frustrated?
All right. So what's your answer to that question?
Yeah, it's my expectation, but do I have time? Do I have time for that? Because
well, that's a different question. Then that's for you to come to grips with. Because from my standpoint, I would say, all right, renew another 30 days because he's connected to you and he's getting some traction. And he may continue to get some traction, or he may continue to be flaky, or he may just go away. But if you terminate your relationship with him, he probably won't take any action at all. But again, there will be people who say you need to cut him loose because he's under the delusion that he has a sponsor and you're enabling him. I disagree with that particular interpretation, but it comes from very credible people who I have total respect for. So I'm just saying you have to figure in prayer and with your sponsor what to do next.
Because I'm thinking that maybe I need to not be a sponsor and just be a step guide to him and explain to him, is that what you're looking for, a step guide?
Well, I have a pretty strong opinion. And that is, if he's this flaky in the relationship so far, for you to think that you could be a step guard is your delusion. Because he's not doing the work and he's not responding to your direction. And if in fact you become a step guide, it will even be more obvious and more frustrating. So I would say he needs eventually he needs a relationship with a man. Eventually, but you have to figure out what your role is and what you're capable or you want to put up with. It's okay for you to say, yeah, this is just really not working for me. We said 30 days and you really do need to find a male sponsor and or step guide. And I'm stepping aside. If that's your conclusion for you.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, but it's very individual. No cookie cutters here, no formula. It's very personal to you. That's why I say pray about it and talk to your sponsor about it. And then you're responsible for your behavior.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but it's wonderful that number one, you want to help. And number two, that you come here to try to sort it out. Excellent. Thank you very much, Lynn. Laura, please.
Hi, Herb.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I just have to tell you that listening on this once a month call, and listening to you guide other people in their work has just been one of the most helpful ways that I've been able to improve my sponsoring over the years. So I'm just really grateful. I've learned so much about how to question people to get them to come to their own answers.
See, that's the most important skill that we can acquire.
Mm-hmm.
Is how do we pose the question that they can get the question and pose it to themselves. Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it's just been really remarkable. And I did the workshop myself in 2018-19. But since then, I've just been listening every year and, doing some of the rewriting of prayers and things that, that strike me and move me. And also, the woman who was my step guide back then, she and I talk weekly, and we've sort of become co-whatevers, but we really are accountability partners for each other. It's really phenomenal. Like she'll say, well, maybe we should look at step 6 and look at the columns on this issue, or maybe we should look at column 3 and column 4 on this issue. And I'll say that to her too. So it's really been a very helpful thing. So the one thing, I have 2 things I'd like to talk about, if that's okay. The first one is an insight that I had this week in working with a woman who is my sponsee here. I'm in OA, and she was my sponsee here. And part of the when I said to her that I would be her sponsee, I knew that your workshop was going to be opening up in, I think it was last February. I don't remember when it was. Well, last summer. It was last summer. It's the one that you're working on now, Thursday and Friday. And I, because of her longevity in program, and I know a little bit of her history, I thought that she would really be well served by participating in this workshop. So, right now, she's working in the workshop and she's diligently doing the work. And so we were going through a column 3 and a column 4, and between the columns, I asked her to read her resentment prayer to me, for deep resentment. So the reason I'm saying this is because it was a really great insight that we both had while she read the resentment prayer to me. And while I've been downloading your new versions of your way of life document, I haven't always printed them. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I was reading to her from an old one that I had. I didn't realize it. And she's reading it to me, and she said, she's reading, help me to show so-and-so compassion, tolerance, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, enable me to release this resentment. And mine says, enable me to stop clinging to this resentment. And so I didn't realize it till she was finished, and I asked her to reread it. And I said to her, mine says stop clinging. And I really find that phrase, stop clinging, it rings for me because I'm a clinger. I'm just a clinger. So I said that to her because she didn't know about the stop clinging, right? Because it's not on her document that she just downloaded. And she really liked it too. And so while we were talking, we decided that in order to release something, you probably have to stop clinging to it first. Right. So we sort of hybrided it and made it, please enable me to stop clinging to this resentment and then release it. So I just thought I wanted to share that in case it rang true for anybody else. I am a clinger, and I just
it actually rings. It rings nice to me because there's a not so subtle relationship between the two. The one is my role, stop clinging. The other is God's role, release me. Mm-hmm. So it's very accurate, and I like it. I might revise it. I'll take it under consideration. Right.
Alrighty. Well, I just wanted to let you know it rang for her and it rang for me. And believe it or not, I've been able to take this prayer for resentment that I did when I did the work in 2018-19, and I've distilled it to a prayer that I use almost every day in 10-step stuff, where I'll ask God to release the negative energy that I feel around a person, right. And I'll ask him I'll ask my higher power to help me stop clinging to the resentment.
Yeah.
And so I still use that clinging word on a regular basis. So right. I just wanted to bring that up in case
Well,
it may
and
bring
it- and it's
someone
not
else.
a word, it's not a word that people hear a lot, so therefore it has a lot of power. So I'm really glad. And one of the benefits of feedback from people is that that's why I revise the resources every year. I challenge all of the words like you're doing right here. And so this has been a very a gift. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad to be able to share it. And then the other one I've had this question for many, many years. I've asked lots of people it, and I thought it might be worthwhile to bring it up again now. And that's the connection between harms done, harms done in the fourth step, right? When you identify them, and then also identifying and discerning between a true harm done that you need to make amends for in the 8th and 9th step. Now, I realize that we can't talk about that now in the workshop because that would preclude people from doing the work they need to do in 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. I realize that. So I thought this might be a good place to bring it up.
Sure.
That's step, being in OA, a lot of people that I've sponsored over the years don't have a lot of, sometimes they have harms done, real harms done, like stealing, or I don't even want to give examples of real harms done, but overtly obvious harms done that you need to make amends for and restitution for.
Right.
But a lot of people, a lot of the women that I've worked with, their harms done is mostly guilt.
It's guilt and shame. Yeah.
Guilt and shame.
Which is harms done, by the way.
So say that again.
Guilt and shame are not harms done to anybody else.
I realize that, but they can cause emotional harm to people close in your family, for
But
example.
that's real harm. That's real harm.
Right. So I do understand that, like with my children and my husband and people I have a deep relationship with or an intimate, I can say to them during the amends process, what harm, did this harm you, or what else harmed you?
Mhm.
But you're not going to do that with the person you gossiped about in 6th grade, for example.
Correct.
Like, so
normally that's correct. Yeah.
normally not. And so,
but maybe there's no harm there also. Just because they're in your 4th step or 4th column or any aspect of your 4th step doesn't mean that there is harm done. All right.
except that we asked the question.
We asked the question for a reason. In column 4, I asked the questions number 6 and 7, which at least helps me begin to see the impact of my own attitude and emotions and reactions in column 4, which is what I'm trying to see is my role and my responsibility in creating my resentment. And it also corresponds to what the big book says in step 8. When it asks us to make a list of our harms, it says in step 8 in the big book that we did so when we took inventory. So it serves a double purpose. The questions in the 4th column, the first 5 come right from page 67 of the big book that Bill talks about, the final conclusion to the resentment process. The others are merely setting us up for future work, as well as, and this is the primary purpose of it, to help us see our harms done, our fears, our character defects. And so we're beginning to really own the filters that we're looking at life in, to take then full ownership of our responsibility for the creating the resentment and the impact of that, of course. So when we get to the 8th step, and I think this is the heart of your question, is what is a harm?
Yes.
What is
the heart of my question?
A harm is not necessarily physical or financial. A harm can be quite subtle, as emotional harm, and you referred to that, or as mental harm, and that's a connotation connected to potentially emotional harm. And that would be, so my definition of harm is any negative impact on other people as the result of my attitude and or behavior. Any negative impact. So that's not physical, that's not necessarily financial. But if I'm a mother that's gambling, if I'm a mother that's drinking or using drugs and or using food and escaping from reality or modeling unhealthy or inappropriate behavior in my home, and I've created a dysfunction in my home, I've created some harm there. And so it's not measurable necessarily, but it's still a harm done because we've created a dysfunctional home at the least, and perhaps even some trauma at the most, stuff that we're not even aware of until, of course, young adulthood and or whatever else of the kids. And those are the things that need to be addressed. That is the impact, the negative impact on them of creating an environment that was not healthy and or modeling healthy behavior.
So when I originally, not originally, it wasn't original, but when I went through the big book for the first time from the beginning through 164, I was told when I did my inventory that some of the harm is the negative energy that I created around a resentment. And
Not harm. No, that's not harm.
okay,
That's the classic mistake people make.
that's what I'm questioning. Yes.
In step 8, when I say what's the harm, people start talking about their behavior, and I have to stop them. No, your behavior is not the harm. The harm is the impact of your behavior.
So what,
That's not subtle. That's black and white. That is not subtle.
did you ever hear the story that, if someone gossips, they hurt 3 people, they hurt the person, the gossiper?
But wait, no, I hear all this stuff.
Yeah,
I hear a lot of ignorance in meetings.
Yeah, I just want to have.
Well, wait. Has any gossip that you've ever done really damaged anybody? Did they lose a job? Did they lose finances? Did they lose opportunity? Did they lose a relationship?
No.
What is the negative impact of your gossip? And when I said that to this step guide, my very first one, he said, Herb, you're just not that important or powerful. All right. You may have hurt the person you're gossiping to.
Yes.
Because you created a negative attitude toward the other person, and then that prevents that person from having a productive relationship with that other person. Your gossip may have hurt the person you gossip to, but not the person you gossiped about.
So I understand that. I was going to say 3 people I was told were hurt. The person that gets I know, I get that you disagree that the person who was gossiped about, but the person you gossip to, do you need to make amends to that person?
That's a question. And once again, there's at least 30%, probably 50% of the people in a 12-step program that have some tendency toward perfectionism.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, no, seriously. No, but it's a neuroses. It's not healthy.
It's scrupulosity. It's not healthy. You're right.
Scrupulosity is actually a mental disorder. That is correct.
Oh, well, I'm not using it psychologically, but I'm talking about it as neurosis, as neurosis.
So
how do you help someone discern is what I'm guessing.
Oh, that's it. You help them by having this very conversation.
Okay, thank you.
And in prayer, and in conversation with experienced people, not scrupulous people, not neurotic people, not perfectionistic oriented people who don't have a clue about their own perfectionism. It's like, really?
What about perfectionist people in recovery? For example, I would call myself a perfectionist in recovery.
I suspected.
No. I mean, do you feel that? Right. Do you think that I should guide someone to someone else?
No. Why would you do that? You're conscious of your perfectionistic tendencies.
Okay.
No, I think you're the perfect person to guide somebody.
Okay.
Because you're aware of it. And you know it's not a healthy tendency.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, you're People with the consciousness of their deficiencies are the best people to deal with.
But Herb, doesn't that drift into her expectations of her sponsee?
Yes, of course.
And so where do they get into interplay? Like, what if they move at a different pace, or they don't understand things as deeply as she does? Does that mean they're not doing a good job?
No, it means, and that's a totally different take and question. You meet people where they are, not where you think they ought to be, or not where you are. You meet people where they are.
And that's exactly why I'm asking the question, because most of the people that I work with are where I was, or are where I can see I'm moving.
That's why you can ask good questions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I just, it's really difficult to discern when you have that lens of perfectionism, I guess. I don't know. So that's why I wanted to ask you that question. I really appreciate you letting me get it out.
Well, but it's such a critical question for all of us. We need patience, of course, with ourselves and with the other person. Mm-hmm. And we keep the lens of, I want to really be helpful. Mm-hmm. And people suffer because they don't know. So I'm going to be a teacher, but what can they absorb? What are they capable of hearing based on their level of recovery and their level of personal and emotional development?
And so also, I guess the balance I'm striving for, seriously, I mean this with all sincerity, is not to sweep away things that you don't have to make amends for. Do you know what I mean? That balance of...
I think that's a critical role for sponsorship and for Step Guide, both, is to help people get very clear as to what is harm. Mm-hmm. All right, there's no formula here. There's a prayer and talking to experienced people. What is harm? Lots of the harm I thought I didn't do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lots of the things that I did that I didn't think were harm were harmful. Mm-hmm. And I needed an experienced person, and I needed a therapist. All right. I was in therapy at the same time, and I got some feedback from a psychological standpoint as to the way to think about things. That's why I'm so connected to scrupulosity and perfectionism as a neurosis and a mental disorder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you, because I'm always, searching for the to be helpful. That's really what I want to do. And I know how my lens sometimes is a little cloudy. I have asked people to call other people if I know someone else has a specific issue, like they've had a specific issue with adultery or infidelity or something like that, that I can't help them discern.
Well, and that was the thing. This man said to me, I don't have any experience with that situation, that involves a woman. Go talk to a woman with experience that you trust. Mm-hmm. And it was extremely embarrassing, but very helpful.
Thanks, Herb.
Yeah. Again. Now, these are the vibrant, vital conversations that we need to have once we get involved with other people. And it's going to take many different twists and turns. Always prayer, always advice from experienced people, counsel with experienced people, and sometimes from professionals. Mm-hmm. Anything else, Laura?
No. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Dale, please.
Hi, Herb. Dale, multiple programs. My question relates to identification as an anorexic in SLA, and I'm working with a woman and taking her through the steps. She's on the 4th step. It's been extremely frustrating for me. She's got ADHD. I've asked her to go to Tuesday nights and participate, and she falls asleep. She can't follow the conversations. I've pretty much had to spoon feed the steps as we go along. Yeah. And she does have an obvious disability. But in column 4, it's she is a victim and she likes the story. Keep coming back, but she is really unable to see her part in things.
Right.
That she was the victim. I mean, she was abused and abandoned as a child, and
Right.
she comes from a wealthy, powerful family who's, because of her disability, they have controlled her life in
Yeah.
many ways.
Sure.
And I don't know how to guide her. I'm not able to ask the right questions. Because it triggers a lot of things in me, and
All right.
my inadequacies, and a couple of times I've said, I don't know how I can help you.
That's great.
And my sponsor, and she says I am helping her and she wants to continue. So I don't
The woman
want to.
that you're working with says you are being helpful.
Yes, yes.
And you take it at face value. Yeah. And so your question is what?
How can I get, when it comes to step 4, holding on to the resentment? I mean, she doesn't see her character defects at all. And her real role, she doesn't see that she has a part in this. It's all
For
been
sure.
done.
If she holds on to the victim stance, that's the lenses. And if she can't see character defects, I mean, that's a clue that she isn't very self-reflective. She's not very conscious yet. Is she relatively new?
Unfortunately not.
Okay. All right. So she's not had a lot of experience, unfortunately, in the past exposure to her 12-step program.
She has gone through the steps in Al-Anon, and I have referred her back to her Al-Anon sponsor in reference to numerous things, but she's been in SLA for 6 or 8 years and she's never had a sponsor.
Okay. All right.
So,
All right. Is that something that you recommend she get?
well, I'm acting as her sponsor, but
In SLA?
yes.
Are
Yes.
you in SLA then?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. So you have experience. Well, that's great. Okay. All right. Some people have found it helpful to involve a third person in the conversation, a wisdom person with some experience. But you would have to ask her if she's okay. You would say, I don't have any experience with that. I have a difficulty connecting you with my experience, either of those. And would you be okay if we invited my sponsor or this other third person who has some experience that I think might be helpful to us, and see if she would because then in a 3-way conversation, sometimes another person can pick up the question and or an angle that might be helpful.
Okay. I'll try that.
But I've participated in it because I've been asked to be that third person many times, and it's amazing how the dynamic then gets really very real and very deep very quickly if the person's sincere and not mentally ill.
I mean, because yeah. Can it be a man? Does that?
That would be a discernment. And if you know of somebody like that, that would be something you would introduce to her. You'd need her clear permission that there would be a third person, and then it would be a male. And then, offer her the reasons. If she really wants help, she will probably go, yes, that'd be fine. Yeah, that she might say, I'm really scared and intimidated by that process. But if she's willing to do that, it could be quite helpful.
Okay. Because I have asked one of my mentors, and he told me to let her go. And
I understand that too. And it may be the right thing to do, but I don't think you've explored it enough yet to actually come to that conclusion.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks very much, Dale. Stephanie, please.
Okay. Hi, Herb, everybody. I
Hi.
have a appreciate everyone shares. It's really allowed me to look and think of myself, to go within and listening to the shares. I just wanted to share some of the suggestions that I've given to people who have asked me to sponsor them, although I have not sponsored, but I've stood in places with them. Things that I suggest for them is, one, I'm often curious to why they are attracted to me, and to ask what that attraction was. And then I say to them that let's pray together if they're interested in prayer. Oh, and let's pray for a person to support you. And then the other suggestion is, once you pray for that person to support you and you ask them, then possibly ask them if you guys can pray. And it doesn't matter to what that time frame is. I prayed 3 days with people. I prayed 7. But it's something about that time and supporting that they get a person to support them. I am their pal. I will chat with them throughout that process, until they get a person secure to sponsor them. And I also ask them, another thing I ask them to do is to look within the rooms and to listen to someone that you feel that's relatable to you. Yeah. And that may be the person. I don't ask them to tell me who the people are. I'm just holding them up in this knowingness that someone is in these spaces, is available to support them through this process.
Right. Who they identify with. That's really, really critical. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Well, okay. And that's it's a very spiritual approach and a very brave approach to ask people to pray with you. Many people would be very uncomfortable with that. I'll tell you, it's a wonderful mechanism, of course, and it models a certain amount of hope and belief in the spiritual aspect of the process. So, yeah, very supportive of that. It changed my wife's and my relationship when we began praying together.
Yeah, when I say pray together, for me, it's like we both are holding this topic. So right. They may not pray with me directly in that point, but to know that we have committed for wherever many days, because I'm going to hold my commitment to those days that we've set together in that quick moment, because it's really quick. It's just a conversation, right? And most time I've been really excited that most people have said yes, and they have been successful in finding someone that works well with them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's another very, very good point that you're making. I want to emphasize it. And that is, I tell people who are looking for a sponsor and or a step guide to pray pray daily for 90 days in a row for guidance. And quite frankly, it was my experience. And I've never heard anybody not have a good experience with that. So thank you very much for that, Stephanie. Iris, please.
Did you mean Chris?
It is Chris. The words are very small. Sorry, thank you.
So I've been in program for probably 37 years plus in some 12-step program, and in and out of sponsoring, and I'm trying to take this step guide to prepare, so I have a clearer picture of what will work to bring about more of a success for those that I work with.
That's one of the purpose of this meeting. So great.
So what I have found, the way I guess I was sponsored without realizing it, is that my sponsor, the way I sponsor is, I think that what people need, because the step is to know God's will for you and to have the power to carry it out. So I think that I see myself as a person, as like you mentioned, a sounding board. What is getting in the way from you understanding God's will, and who is God to you, and what are you hearing God say to you, and are you willing to carry it out? Are you willing to do it? And and what happens when you do it. And most of the time, I think they run from that. There's something they were receiving, they have stumbling blocks.
Oh, I see. Yes.
which is where I don't know, because to me it's a personal relationship, and I don't have God's wisdom. And if God doesn't let them know what will remove that stumbling block or how to get past it, I don't know what my role is then. I don't know. I just listen. And so that's one part of it. And I'll just let you answer that for now.
All right, great. It's wonderful that you're conscious of what your role is. We're the finger that points the way to the light. We're not the light. We're the finger that points the way, the path, the steps, the suggested actions that people can take to have a relationship. The word that you used, to have a relationship with power, light, energy, nature, God. Now, there are some people that can't hear the word God's plan, can't hear the word God's will. And I found it very helpful to change the vocabulary. So, reality, that's my current word here. You want to be in alignment with reality. Now, that phrase is not in the big book, but I use the term alignment about the third step, a commitment to be in alignment. Now, Bill uses the term to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. A lot of people will go, yeah, what does that mean? It's way kind of like too beyond their vocabulary and or their emotions about it, because they've had some maybe unfortunate experiences with religion and or the term God. So I talk about becoming in alignment with reality, just as reality manifests, and to be in the flow. What is God's will? I don't know, but you're right. In step 11, it suggests that we improve our conscious contact, praying for the knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. What does that mean? I want to be in the flow of reality so that I can be content, I can be happy, I can feel a sense of congruence within myself and with the people around me. The key is relationship. I believe that's the heart of the matter in step 3. At the bottom of page 62 and the 2 paragraphs on page 63, Bill talks about a relationship. He doesn't use those terms again, but underneath the terms, director, the relationship is actor. Underneath the term of parent, father, the relationship is child. Underneath the relationship of employer, the relationship is employee, etc. And so I do believe step 3 is about the relationship. And again, we have to frame it, meet them where they are. If they have any resistance to spirituality, if they have any resistance to the term God, then try to find vocabulary that would help them. I think that addresses your question. I'm not sure. You want to give me some feedback on that?
Sure, it does. And you're right. I mean, you need to meet them where they are. And that's, I guess, my growth, to hear where they're at, to not to think what they need, but to actually hear where they are at and what they need. I
hope everybody heard that. Say it again, please.
To hear where they're at and not what I think that they need, or, but to actually hear. And so I guess that's my growth. But then I don't know if you've, I think I'm wrestling with my own higher power about it, because I know that God knows them. And if I am to be an instrument to point the way, I want to hear accurately. And I guess I trust or ask that my higher power guide me as to what they need to hear, what I need to say or do, what they're ready for. Like it's been mentioned, how much guidance, what are they ready? And that's part of my sponsor said to me, because I'm in OA and I've been abstinent 35 years. So when I would go to a party or something and I would start to have the emotional rebelling, I don't want to go to a party and not participate. I don't want to be limited that way. My sponsor would say to me, you're physically abstinent, but emotionally you're not ready. So ask yourself, what do you want to do? What can you do? You don't have to jump that big step and not do anything at the party, but what can you do? And what are you comfortable with to take that next step of growth? And for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to have, I don't know, X amount of celery sticks or, 10 carrot sticks, whatever it is.
Right.
But to get clear about that. And so, but when I'm working with somebody, I hear and feel that unless we're all sponsoring the same, unless we're all doing it the same, there's a quote, right or wrong. And there isn't. I mean, if I've learned anything from my higher power, he is so individual. I mean, when I hear in the rooms and people connect with their higher power, it's pretty tailored to them. And it's the baby step they need.
Yeah.
Other people outside of them will expect them or get impatient or unkind. But when their connection is with the higher power, it's, I can do that. And that makes sense. And so it aligns. And so I guess I just, I don't hear clearly all the time my own higher power guiding me for somebody else's life. For my own life, I hear more specific, but I think that is not my role, is to get revelation for them about what their higher power wants them to do.
Although you could trust your own instincts and intuitions with regard to what you're to speak about your experience to them, that will be helpful.
I do. I say, this is what I found helpful to me.
There you go.
To get past this point,
I asked
to make
for
it
guidance. I asked for
Right.
guidance to guide you. And then I trust the thoughts and the feelings that I have in terms of what I need to share with them. Yeah.
I have had some people get really irate with me, and have a hard time with growing that direction. So,
but what is the pushback from them that you're hearing?
well, I know that they're just not ready, I guess.
Well, no, that's your judgment about it. What are they saying when they're resisting what you're saying? What are they actually saying to you?
They don't want to change. They don't want to do anything differently.
Okay. Well,
they want to keep doing what they're doing in the way they're doing it without they can't trust it. And so I'm usually trying to say to them, I was there. I mean, I was an angry person coming in. I was angry. I said, how can you say you're a grateful 12-stepper? What is there to be grateful about? But so I was resentful that I was in a 12-step meeting.
Sure.
But I didn't know what I didn't know.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. When people tell me, no, I don't want to do that, I say, oh, okay, that's fine with me. All right. My job here is to tell you what I think will work for you. but you can do anything that you
Right, sorry.
and just pay attention to the outcome. If you're getting the outcome that you want from what you do, don't change anything. If you're not getting the outcome from what you're doing, you might want to explore doing something differently. Because if you don't do something differently, you won't get something different. You will always get what you've been getting.
Yes, and that my heart gets broken. So tell me what my defect is that when they stay in the suffering.
Well, but
I watch them suffering. I'm watching them
you're
suffer.
attached to the outcome then.
Yeah, okay.
You're attached to their happiness.
Yeah, I breaks
Are you
my
in
heart.
Al-Anon?
Yes, I
All
do.
right. Well, then you might want to have a conversation with your sponsor about that, because Al-Anon has made a science of not being attached to other people. Their suffering is their suffering. I'm passionate to try to help them reduce their suffering, but I'm not attached to it. I've had many people suffer and die. Sometimes I'll go to their funeral and sometimes I won't.
It's well, I know that at the core of I've learned in the walls that we suffer because we somewhere in that we believe that that's what we deserve, and the more that we work the steps, the more we climb out of that need to suffer, and the more we're willing to change.
Well, and the more we are changed, our consciousness improves. That's the whole point of a spiritual awakening. Our consciousness improves, our behavior improves, and that becomes then a very positive dynamic. As our behavior improves, our consciousness improves, and our suffering gets reduced. That's the whole point of it. That's why I tell people to watch their behavior. Don't tell me what you're thinking. Don't tell me what you're feeling. Interesting what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and that it's an important conversation. But the most important conversation is, what are you doing? If you want to think differently and feel differently, begin to do different. And if you don't want to, I can't help you. If you're not willing to change something, I can't help you.
Right.
It's hard.
Well, this is very helpful. So thank you.
Well, you sound like you're surrounded with wisdom people, and that you've become one, and you want to really help. Just be careful about your attachment to their doing what it is you suggest.
Yes. Yes, I've been humbled.
There, yeah.
I have been humbled extremely to suggest, praying about something, and then have come back, and I trust that they're going to try it at least. And they go, no, I didn't want to. And so I can say, you didn't want to find out about your higher power or build a relationship.
It's good to ask questions, but not in terms of a cloaked judgment. Careful that we're not judging or shaming or guilting them through the questions that we ask.
Right. That's why it's so critical. I think I could get paralyzed with fear.
I don't believe you will. You sound very healthy. You sound like you've got a really solid, vital program.
Well, thank you. I just want to be prepared that the next time I stay more serene, I guess, in the process.
Sure. Yeah.
That I can hear my higher power clearly, know what would help and what wouldn't help.
Yep.
And watch them grow in their own pace and time, and
willing to admit when you don't know, or when it's confusing, or when you've made a mistake, and then acknowledge it. It's kind of like we call it a practice, don't we? We're practicing life, and we're practicing helping, and we're practicing being decent people, and regularly we make mistakes.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks so much. A great conversation. Thank you. Elizabeth, please.
Good afternoon. I have a question coming from the sponsee point of view, me being the sponsee. Is this the right forum? Or should I just?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. I've had I'm an FA since 2012. I've had many breaks, and have been scared about telling my sponsor the truth. And you and I talked, you said I have to be honest with my sponsor.
You don't have to be.
Well, I want to get the healing, so yes, I have to be. I don't have a choice.
I want to be rigorously honest with my sponsor.
Okay, so my last sponsor had a break, so I started looking for a new sponsor.
Why?
Because to be in your group, I had to have a sponsor, and my old sponsor.
Why did you? Because she had a break. Why did you change sponsors?
Because in FA, if they have a break, they can't sponsor.
Okay, so it was her decision, not yours.
No, it was FA's decision, but let's not get technical.
Okay.
But I looked for a new sponsor.
Yeah.
And I explained to the sponsor, because I've done a lot of praying and thinking about it, that I have a lot of fear about authoritative figures, and that I was looking for a sponsor who could be my mentor, who would not be upset with my breaks, and that because I wanted to be, I used your term, scrupulously honest or transparent with her.
I would never have used the term scrupulously honest. I would never have used that term.
Okay.
But rigorously, I would, because that's in the big book.
Okay. So I hear what I want to hear. And I've come to the conclusion, when we talk, I get the distinct feeling that she's angry and mad at me.
All right.
And that
Have you told her that?
Pardon me?
Have you
Well,
told
what
her?
I want to tell her is, I wrote it down, and I want you to think, I want your feedback, because I talked to her tomorrow morning. I think you and I have a communication. We're not communicating effectively. Would you be willing to share with me how I come across to you?
Great. Yeah.
Is that acceptable?
It sounds wonderful. You're asking for what you want. There's no judgment in it. Yeah. You're asking for some honest communication. Wonderful.
Okay, just thank you, because I'm very scared. Again, this being totally honest is very, very hard on me. So thank you very much.
And again, it's a practice, and it's also making sure that in other people that we don't just take willy-nilly this comment about being rigorously honest and telling everybody what we see and think and feel. No. It's about common sense. It's about common sense. There are need to know, and there's times and places to be honest, and there's times and places to be quiet.
Does that apply to sponsors too in the program?
I would, yes, I won't make any exceptions to it. It's about, but you need to pray about it and use as whatever common sense that you have about that, and be okay to make mistakes. But what you're trying to do here is have an open communication. Wonderful.
Thank you, because I made a lot of outreach calls on the subject, and although I am not aware of it, I seem to have a tone of voice that people who don't know me well could take as being objectionable. But I was not, until I made the outreach calls, my friends would say, we've known you, you come across like you're a lion, we all know you're a mouse, so maybe,
All right, well, to be conscious of how you're perceived and how you're projecting yourself is very important. And but the way you're approaching it sounds very healthy.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. One more, Nan.
Since I started this out, I wanted to bookend it by saying that I have taken a lot of notes, and there's been so much wisdom and good advice that's been shared that, yeah, I feel armed.
Well, that's the real benefit of this conversation. And we're building a library of these conversations so that people can plug in and really be fed. This is substantive stuff. There was no light stuff here. This was all heavy duty, helping people and very practical experience and questions. So thank you very much for joining us. And I hope you periodically or regularly come back on the monthly calls we will be having. So I'm going
Thank you.
invite you. Thanks, Nan, very much. I'm going to invite you to pray. This is the prayer of St. Francis, but it's modified. So I took his name off of it. About awakening and transformation, about that turning that we commit to in step 3. Spirit of the universe, make me a channel of your peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds it is by forgiving that one is forgiven. This last line is the major change. It is by dying that one awakens to life. The actual original says eternal life. I'm much more concerned about this life. It is by dying to my false self that my real self emerges. Thanks, everybody.